In his travel, Herodotus had come across a tribe known as Colchians who lived in Farsis, a river known as Farsis, which I googled and found out that it's called River Rioni, Rioni River, and it is in Georgia. What the land we know today is Georgia in Europe. So he had traveled to that part of the world and he had come across this tribe of people, the Colchians. And what struck him to be odd about these people, they didn't look like the rest of the people, the surrounding land. They looked different. They were of dark skin and they also had woolly hair. And the people he knew to be that dark skin and to have woolly hair were Egyptians and Ethiopians. So he thought there must be a connection between the Colchians and the Egyptians or the Ethiopians, and he wanted to talk to. First, before he even talked about this with the priest at the temple, he had talked to the Colchians themselves and asked them, so what is your origin? And the story he got from them is that they are descendants of Egyptians. And how they came into that part of the world is that there was a king of Egypt called Sesostris. Sesostris had conquered much of Asia, and in fact, historians of that time say that he is the one person who conquered the largest part of the world. Nobody had done like him, and not even Cyrus the Great, because Sosostris had even conquered the Scythians, who were like the most difficult people to conquer. So when Sesostris was coming back to Egypt, he apparently left part of his army in that part of the world. And that army settled there, and they married local women, and then they became the tribe of Colchians. So, but when Herodotus came to Egypt, he was surprised that the general public didn't know about the Colchians. And I have to mention this. Besides them being dark-skinned and having woolly hair, the other thing that made him think that the Colchians were related to Egyptians or Ethiopians is that they practiced circumcision. And it was the understanding of Herodotus that no other society practiced circumcision apart from the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, and the Colchians. So now there was this two link between the Colchians and the Ethiopians and Egyptians, and that was their skin color, how they look, skin color, dark skinned, woolly hair, and they had this practice of circumcision. So when he came to Egypt, he talked to the priest about this, and that's when they told him the story of Sesostris, who left Egypt with a huge army. He went, he conquered Asia, and then coming back, he left this section of his army in that part of the world, which we know today as Georgia, next to that river, Rioni. And they stayed there and they married there, they had kids, and they became a tribe of the Colchians. Yeah, so in another video, I did look at the question of the race of the Egyptians. And I did mention that Herodotus does mention that Egyptians were dark-skinned and they had woolly hair. But I also made you understand that it's not that easy. Like Egypt was a very attractive part of the world, and in fact, when Herodotus is asking the priest about some of these questions, talking to the Egyptian priest about some of these questions, some of the things they explained to him is the rulers, the people who had ruled Egypt. And almost by that time, remember, Egypt continued to exist even after Herodotus. Up to that time, Egypt had been ruled by indigenous Egyptians. It has been ruled by Ethiopians. They had been ruled by the Kush who was a tribe to their south, and other people who had come and conquered. And then after Herodotus, of course, we know other people came along, the Arabs, the Greeks, Hellenics, Alexander the Great, of course, the Romans, the Turks, the Albanians. In fact, even the Mongols did rule Egypt at some point. There were rulers who were Mongols, who are like people close to China. So Egypt has been ruled by so many different people. That's why I still think the question of race is a little bit complex. In fact, even the last king of Egypt, King Farouk, had his ancestors came from Albania. So that's the history of Egypt. So that's why the race in Egypt can be a very complex issue. Anyways, this video was bringing out that part of history that Herodotus tells us about these Colchians people who were in what we know today as Georgia. So that kind of leaves you thinking, maybe the people who are some tribes in Georgia are descendants of ancient Egyptians. Of course, it's like 2,500 years ago. There's been so much movement of people, so it's also likely that nobody in Georgia today has any link to the ancient Egyptians.